I think to me, right now on TV, in the sports anchor game, you the best dressed dude on TV. Okay. To me.
Everyone sees Steve Harvey laughing on Family Feud. Nobody sees what happens at 4 in the morning. At 69, he still works 16-hour days. His body started breaking down in 2023. 3 diagnoses came at once. His immune system weakened to dangerous levels.
I got to looking around, man, and I had high blood. I had this thing called Chagas, which is an immune disorder.
Doctors warned him the pace could kill him, but he cannot slow down. Not after what happened in 1985. Not after 3 years of sleeping in a car. Not after 2 divorces that turned into lawsuits. One ex-wife accused him of destroying her will to live. The smiling man on television carries something much heavier than anyone knows. Steve Harvey came into the world on January 17, 1957 in Welch, West Virginia, a coal town where the air stayed heavy with dust, and most families lived one paycheck from nothing. His full name was Broderick Stephen Harvey, and even that name carried a strange story because his parents named him after the actor Broderick Crawford, a tough television star from the show Highway Patrol. His father, Jesse, worked deep in the coal mines where cave-ins and black lung disease were common, and every day he came home covered in dust that never fully washed away. Steve grew up watching his father cough through the nights, knowing that the mines were slowly taking his life. Jesse stayed there anyway because the family needed the money, and Steve saw early what survival looked like when there were patched clothes in the closet, and sometimes not enough food on the table. Those early years felt hard, even for a coal town. Winters were bitter, and the houses held the cold inside like a trap. Families lost fathers when mines collapsed, and neighbors disappeared without warning. Jesse pushed Steve to dream anyway, telling him not to carry his dreams to the grave. Steve had a stutter that made school painful, and bullies laughed whenever he tried to talk. Yet his father kept reminding him that he had to fight through it. Even the name Broderick felt too big for a boy in a mining town, but somehow it stayed with him, like a promise waiting for its time. His mother, Eloise, held the family together in a different way. She taught Sunday school for 40 years and built her life around faith, pulling the children to church again and again until prayer became part of daily life. She believed that dignity mattered even when money was gone, so she patched old clothes carefully and told her children to walk with pride, no matter how poor they felt. Eloise filled the house with Bible stories and steady rules, and Steve learned early that faith was supposed to carry him through whatever came next. Those lessons stayed with him later when life fell apart and nothing else made sense. The family eventually left Welch and moved to Cleveland, hoping for better work and safer streets. But East 112th Street brought a different kind of struggle. Violence and poverty crowded the neighborhood, and young Steve learned to stay alert while walking to school. His father's health kept getting worse, and his mother prayed harder than ever while the house filled with noise from 5 growing children. Steve was the youngest, which meant he had to fight for attention and space in a home where everyone shared almost everything. He learned to imitate voices from television and make his brothers and sisters laugh. And slowly, the stutter that once embarrassed him started turning into something he could work around. Some summers, he escaped to his grandfather's place in West Virginia, where life moved slower and the quiet felt safer than the city. He chopped wood and listened to old mining stories that later found their way into his jokes. Back in Cleveland, he finished Glenville High School in 1974, with dreams that felt bigger than his circumstances. But once graduation came, he had no clear path forward. He enrolled at Kent State University, hoping college would open doors that had always stayed closed. At first, he tried to fit in, even joining the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, yet classes felt overwhelming, and the pressure never eased. The stutter still made speaking up hard, and the work kept piling higher until he fell behind. Eventually, he left school without a degree, carrying a deep sense of failure that stayed with him long after he walked away. The dream he once wrote down about being on television sat folded away while he took whatever jobs he could find. By his late 20s, he had moved through one job after another, and none of them worked out. He tried selling insurance, but doors closed in his face, and customers lost patience when he spoke. He cleaned carpets for a while and came home exhausted with chemical smells stuck in his clothes. Factory work brought long shifts and sore hands until layoffs pushed him out again. Delivering mail meant long days in heat and snow, while dogs chased him down sidewalks. He even tried boxing for a short time, but the losses came quickly, and the dream ended there too. Money stayed short, and arguments filled the house he shared with his wife Marcia and their twin daughters Brandy and Carly. Every week felt like falling behind, and Steve began to wonder if his life would always look the same. Then one night in October 1985, a friend convinced him to try an open mic night at a Cleveland comedy club. He watched the other performers struggle before his name was called, and when he finally stepped on stage, something shifted inside him.
You know, because now they 7, they starting to come up with them questions. You know, the ones you ain't got no idea what the hell they talking about?
The jokes landed, and the crowd laughed in a way he had never heard before. He won $50 that night and drove home knowing his life had changed. The next day, he quit his job, even though there was no plan waiting. His wife thought he had lost his mind, and the arguments grew worse until the marriage began to break apart. He started traveling for small comedy gigs that paid almost nothing, sending what he could back home and living on whatever remained. Sometimes that meant sleeping in cheap hotel rooms, and sometimes it meant sleeping in his car. Bologna sandwiches from a cooler became normal meals, and gas station sinks turned into places to wash up. Within months, the strain separated him from his family, and the loss weighed on him constantly. He missed birthdays and watched his daughters grow from a distance while he tried to survive on uncertain income. Pride kept him from asking for help, and he pushed forward alone, chasing shows across the country with barely enough money for fuel. For nearly 3 years, his car became his home. He folded clothes into a rough pillow and used the engine heat to stay warm on cold nights. Mornings started in gas station bathrooms where he cleaned up before driving to the next club. He kept food in a small cooler and counted every dollar carefully while hoping each performance might lead to something bigger. Christmas passed one year with him alone in a parking lot, thinking about his children and wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. One night after a bad show, he slipped into a hotel bathroom to clean up, and the weight of everything finally broke him. Sitting there alone, he cried over the life he had lost and the future he could not see. In that moment, he felt a calm voice telling him to keep going and promising that better days would come if he stayed on the path. Whether it came from faith or exhaustion did not matter because he walked out believing he had to continue. That belief carried him into 1990 when he entered the Johnny Walker National Comedy Search with nothing left to lose. The final show took place in Birmingham, and he stepped on stage knowing that one good performance might change everything. The jokes landed perfectly, and when the judges named him the winner, the door to national television opened. A spot on Showtime at the Apollo followed, and his career finally began to move. The success brought him back from the edge, and soon he was hosting Amateur Night at the Apollo, standing in front of live crowds every week and building a reputation that spread through Black communities across the country. The paychecks grew, and he finally left the days of sleeping in his car behind Yet the fear of returning to that life never fully disappeared. He worked constantly because rest felt dangerous, and the memory of homelessness followed him everywhere he went. By the mid-1990s, he pushed himself harder than ever, juggling stand-up tours, television appearances, and radio work while living on little sleep. The pressure eventually caught up with him years later when exhaustion forced him into the hospital and doctors warned him that the pace could destroy his health. He realized then that the same drive that saved him once could also wear him down if he never slowed. Even with the stress, he kept moving forward. And in 1997, he joined Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hewley, and Bernie Mac for the Kings of Comedy tour. Promoters took a chance on filling arenas, and the crowds came in huge numbers until the tour became the biggest comedy run anyone had seen at the time. The shows were loud and raw and full of competition, as each comic tried to own the stage. Steve rewrote material constantly and worked to hold his place among performers who brought fierce energy every night. Money flowed through the tour, but much of it slipped away through bad deals and poor management. When it ended, he found himself with almost nothing left, even though the shows had brought in millions. Tax problems followed, and the stress deepened after his second marriage collapsed, leaving him responsible for debts that seemed impossible to escape. For the second time in his life, he felt close to losing everything, yet he kept pushing through television work and live shows until stability returned. During those same years, he starred in The Steve Harvey Show, playing a former funk singer turned high school teacher in Chicago. The series ran from 1996 to 2002 and became especially popular with Black audiences who saw their own lives reflected in the characters and humor. Behind the scenes, he dealt with contract problems that limited his pay and personal struggles that made the cheerful television role feel far from real life. His second marriage fell apart during the later seasons, and the divorce battle dragged on while cameras kept rolling. When the show ended, he focused on rebuilding and eventually found lasting success with radio and television hosting. Looking back, the path from a cold town childhood to national fame feels tied together by the same thread of survival. The poverty, the failures, the nights spent alone in a car, and the sudden breakthroughs all pushed him forward step by step until the life that once seemed impossible finally became real. Steve Harvey's personal life turned messy in ways that followed him for years, and the worst damage came from his marriages. What began as ordinary family struggles slowly turned into long public battles, filled with accusations, lawsuits, and broken relationships that never fully healed. He married Marcia Harvey in 1981 when he was still a struggling insurance salesman in Cleveland with more dreams than money. A year later, twins Brandy and Carly were born, and in 1991 their son Broderick Jr. arrived. During those years, Steve chased comedy work across the country, sleeping in his car and taking every show he could find. And while he believed he was building a future, Marcia felt left behind. She watched him disappear for long stretches and felt the children mattered less than his career. The distance kept growing until they separated in 1990, while she was still pregnant. People close to them said Steve had already moved on with Mary Lee before the divorce was final, and the split turned bitter. By 1994, Marcia sued for unpaid child support and alimony after 2 years without steady payments, and the court forced Steve to pay what he owed. Even after the legal fight ended, the emotional damage stayed. Steve eventually rebuilt relationships with the children, but Marcia stepped away from public life, and the early years left a mark that never fully faded. His second marriage brought even more trouble. In 1996, he married Mary Lee Shackelford after meeting her in a Texas shopping mall where she worked as a makeup artist. She believed in his dream enough to help finance a comedy club, putting up around $250,000 when he was still trying to find his place in entertainment. Their son Wynton was born in 1997, and for a short time things looked stable. But by the second anniversary, the relationship was already falling apart. Mary said she discovered messages that convinced her Steve was cheating, including contact with Marjorie Bridges, who he had known for years. The marriage slowly collapsed, and the divorce in 2005 turned into a long custody fight. Steve won custody of Wynton while Mary moved out and tried to rebuild on her own. The settlement gave her 3 houses and $40,000 a month until 2009, along with a $1.9 million payment. Yet she later said the money disappeared, and she was left with nothing. 2 years later, Steve married Marjorie in 2007, and Mary went public with her anger, saying she had lost her home, her stability, and most painfully, her connection with her son. She said she only wanted one phone call from him, but years passed without contact. The image of Steve as a family man took a hit as the story spread, and people began to question what really happened behind the scenes. The anger did not fade with time. In 2017, Mary filed a lawsuit asking for $60 million and accusing Steve of what she called soul murder. The papers described emotional torment and financial ruin that she said pushed her toward suicide. She claimed he pulled her out of a psychiatric program after only 3 days and left her without support. She also accused him of turning Wynton against her and ruining her business opportunities while hiding assets from the divorce settlement. The case was filed by a civil rights activist rather than a licensed lawyer, and the court dismissed it in 2018. Yet the filings revealed how deeply hurt she still felt. She said he had taken her son and her will to live. And even though Steve denied the claims, the story shocked many fans who had only seen his smiling television persona. Mary continued speaking out and said Steve had been involved with Marjorie for 9 years before their marriage, leaving her behind while he built his fortune. She believed he hid money during the settlement and said she lived in poverty, while Marjorie traveled to fashion events and luxury vacations. What hurt most was the belief that Wynton had been turned against her during the custody fight, and as he grew older, he appeared publicly as part of Steve and Marjorie's blended family, while his mother remained absent. Mary said she helped build Steve's career and deserved a share of everything that came after the divorce. Steve responded with proof of payments and insisted the matter was settled. Yet the bitterness remained, and the family stayed divided. The conflict grew even more public in 2011, when Mary posted a series of emotional YouTube videos accusing Steve of cheating and financial wrongdoing. She described being forced out of her home and losing contact with her son, while Steve and Marjorie lived comfortably. The videos spread quickly online and brought attention back to the divorce, leading Steve to take legal action. A judge ruled she had violated a gag order and sentenced her to 30 days in jail in 2013. After serving the time, she returned online with more videos, asking for recognition and contact with her son. The court used some of those statements to question her stability, and although Steve's television career kept growing, the family conflict never truly ended. While those personal battles followed him, another moment placed him in front of the entire world for a very different reason. On December 20th, 2015, during the Miss Universe pageant, Steve read the results card and announced Ariadna Gutierrez of Colombia as the winner, even though Pia Wurtzbach of the Philippines had actually won. The card listed the first runner-up before the winner, a format different from previous years, and Steve read it the wrong way. Gutierrez stood on stage wearing the crown while her national anthem played and millions watched the celebration. The arena filled with confusion and noise as the mistake became clear, and Steve returned to the stage holding the card and apologizing on live television. Producers suggested letting the media handle it later, but he chose to take responsibility immediately and told viewers it was his mistake. The moment turned into one of the most talked-about live television errors ever. Sponsors pulled back, online jokes spread everywhere, and Gutierrez later received a settlement, while Wurzbach continued her reign. Steve's career eventually recovered, but the clip never disappeared, and he later called it the worst mistake he ever made. Not long after that, another controversy damaged his image again. In January 2017, during a segment on his talk show, he joked about a book titled How to Date a White Woman and laughed at the idea of Asian men dating outside their race. The audience reacted awkwardly while the comments spread online, and Asian American leaders criticized the remarks as offensive and insulting. Public pressure forced him to apologize, though many people felt the apology lacked sincerity. The incident sparked debates about celebrity responsibility and reminded viewers that even well-known entertainers could stumble publicly. Another uncomfortable moment came from a long-running disagreement with comedian Monique. Their conflict reached a peak in February 2019 when she appeared on his show and confronted him about comments he had made regarding her career struggles. She spoke about being labeled difficult after refusing unpaid promotional work following her Oscar win, and she said powerful figures privately supported her while staying silent in public. Steve responded that success required strategy and sometimes compromise, even saying integrity carried a price. The exchange turned tense as they argued about principle and survival in the entertainment business, and after the show, Monique accused him of choosing money over loyalty, while he said he only wanted to help her repair relationships. The disagreement continued for years and left fans divided about who was right. While these controversies followed him, another part of his career was growing fast. In 2009, he released a relationship advice book called Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man that became a bestseller and sold millions of copies. The book promised to explain how men think and encouraged women to set rules such as waiting 90 days before sex. Critics attacked the ideas as outdated and harsh, saying they reduced relationships to business deals and reinforced old stereotypes about men and women. Online discussions mocked some of the claims, yet the attention only increased sales. The success led to a 2012 movie adaptation that earned $96 million and a sequel that brought in another $70 million. The controversy helped turn Steve into a well-known relationship expert and opened the door to more projects. At the same time, his work on Family Feud became one of his biggest sources of income. He took over as host in 2010 when the show needed fresh energy, and his quick reactions and jokes brought new viewers. The program tapes around 180 episodes each season and pays him roughly $50,000 to $55,000 per episode, bringing in about $10 million a year, with Celebrity Family Feud adding several million more. Years earlier, he had lived in a 1976 Ford Tempo, while trying to make it as a comedian, washing up in gas stations and wondering if success would ever come. Hosting Showtime at the Apollo in 1993 helped change his path, and Family Feud later turned him into one of television's most recognizable faces. His radio career grew just as strong. The Steve Harvey Morning Show began in 2000 and expanded across nearly 90 stations with about 7 million listeners each week. The show mixes comedy, advice, and celebrity stories and brings in around $20 million a year. The success helped build his public image, but also brought occasional criticism, including claims from other comedians who believed he blocked opportunities. Still, the show continued to grow and became one of the most popular programs in its format. By 2017, he expanded further by launching Steve Harvey Global, a company that oversees international versions of Family Feud, along with other projects. The company helped bring the show to countries including Ghana and South Africa and created new licensing deals worth millions each year. Tabloid stories repeated old accusations from his divorces, but the business kept growing and strengthened his position as a global television figure. With wife Marjorie, the combined wealth reached around $250 million, a long way from the years when he slept in a car. Behind the success, health problems were building quietly. In 2023, Steve revealed that doctors had diagnosed him with 3 serious conditions at the same time. His blood pressure was dangerously high, he had Sjogren's syndrome, which affected moisture glands in his body, and he suffered from severe sleep apnea that stopped his breathing during the night. Blood tests showed his white blood cell count had dropped to risky levels, leaving his immune system weak after decades of non-stop work. He admitted he ignored warning signs like constant fatigue and dry mouth because he believed the work had to continue. Doctors monitored his blood regularly, but the white blood cell numbers stayed low despite treatment. The autoimmune condition affected his glands, while stress from years of long workdays made recovery harder. He said the results made him fear ordinary illnesses because his body could not fight infections the way it once did. He began testing several times a year and worried about how long he could keep working at the same pace. Sleep brought its own struggle, because severe sleep apnea caused him to wake repeatedly gasping for air. The condition could interrupt breathing dozens of times an hour and left him exhausted during the day. Oxygen levels dropped while he slept, affecting concentration and mood and pushing his blood pressure even higher. He relied on energy shots to stay awake during long workdays, while hiding the exhaustion from people around him. Doctors warned untreated apnea could shorten his life through heart strain and long-term damage. At age 66, he decided to change his lifestyle and began working with health specialist Gary Brecka. He cut out processed foods and sugar, followed a strict diet, added fasting routines, and focused on exercise and recovery. Over several months, he stopped using blood pressure medication and no longer needed the sleep machine he once relied on. Some doctors questioned whether the improvements meant the conditions were truly gone, but the changes gave him new energy and allowed him to continue working at a demanding pace. Even with better health, he kept pushing himself. At 69, his days begin around 4 in the morning, with radio broadcasts reaching millions of listeners. After that, he often travels to Atlanta for Family Feud tapings and then moves on to meetings or other shows connected to his business projects. The schedule leaves little time for rest, and friends worry he works too hard. Yet he says the routine keeps him grounded. There were moments in 2025 when he needed oxygen after long flights, yet he still returned to work the same day. The drive comes from memories he cannot shake. In 1985, he left his insurance job with only $50 and spent nearly 3 years living in his Ford Tempo while chasing comedy work. He washed in hotel bathrooms and sometimes slept in parking lots, wondering how he would survive. Those years stayed with him, and even with a fortune of around $200 million, he still fears losing everything. He admits canceled shows make him anxious and says the fear of returning to poverty pushes him to accept every opportunity. Family responsibilities add to the pressure. Between his children and stepchildren, he supports a large blended family along with several grandchildren. Some run businesses or careers connected to his success, while others rely on him for stability. Large gatherings and celebrations fill his homes, and he often travels between work and family events to stay present in both worlds. The responsibility keeps him working, even when people close to him suggest slowing down. In early 2026, he released a long motivational video about rebuilding life through new habits. He spoke about changing mindset and learning from failure, while admitting he still carried memories of difficult years. Viewers noticed moments when his voice softened and his thoughts drifted toward the past, and many felt the message sounded personal as much as motivational. The video showed a man who built a powerful career yet still questioned himself. At this stage of life, he often says, "Success did not erase fear." The businesses bring millions each year and provide financial security. Yet he continues working with the same urgency he had when he owned nothing. He fills his schedule with projects and appearances because staying busy feels safer than slowing down. The wealth built freedom on the outside, but the memories of struggle remain close, and the man who once slept in a car still feels driven to keep moving forward.